This is Newsday on the BBC. I'm Rico Hizon in Singapore.
I'm Babita Sharma in London. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines this hour. A leaked UN report into the civil war in Sri Lanka says its staff failed to protect civilians as the conflict came to a bloody conclusion.
It is the final day of China's Communist Party Congress as it prepares the way for the change of leadership at the top. Let's get more on one of our main stories, the upcoming announcement of China's new leaders. What challenges will they face, particularly with the economy? And joining me now from Malaysia is Thye, a former advisor to China's Ministry of Finance. Professor Wu, thank you so much for joining us. You've written a book about China's economy, and you've outlined that the mainland is being threatened by the so-called middle-income trap and is unable to become a modern country. But if you take a look at the Chinese economy over the past decade, it has grown so fast, and it has basically been able to pull a lot of people out of poverty. So why do you think they're unable to become a modern country?
I think the reason is that economic growth could be described as several stages, and at each stage of growth, the economic challenge is different. Like, for example, 100 years ago, if you ask yourself in 1912, which was the fastest growing country for 35 years, it would have been Argentina. And now when we think of Argentina, we think of the phrase, "Don't cry for me." The past is not a reliable indicator of the future.
So if it is not a benchmark, so what do you think will the new leaders have to do to steer the nation from these key challenges?
Well, the first big challenge is certainly in the hardware of economic management. For example, the banking system does not work, and the last 10 years, the growth has been powered by the state sector. It is now time for the private state sector to emerge, to take over to be the driver of the economy. So that is fixing the hardware, which requires other things like eliminating the household registration system that tied the peasants to the land, and privatization of the rural farmland.
So what will be the repercussions, Professor Wu, if they will not be able to rise to these challenges that they're facing?
Well, we already see the first signs of it. Number one, the economic growth the last 10 years has been over 9% a year. But yet, the poverty rate for the people who earn less than 75 cents a day, that has stagnated for the last 10 years. Unlike, let's say, from the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s, where 10% growth, you see steady emergence of people from poverty, extreme poverty.
But so basically, Professor Wu, briefly before we let you go, assuming that Xi Jinping becomes the next leader of the mainland, what do you think should be his first priority?
His first priority is to switch away, is to free up the private sector. That's the most important thing. And also to turn investment away from export industries towards urbanization. Urbanization for the migrant workers. Right now, the migrant workers are not given any priority in terms of low-income housing, and that's a big mistake.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Professor Thye joining us from Penang, Malaysia. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.